Mr. Song.
Hey.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you as always.
How many cars do you have this time at the show?
5 separate projects here.
So is it 5 separate cars, 4 booths?
Yes. So I have 2 here at the Toyo Tread Pass. I have 1 at Saban, 1 with Mackin, and 1 over with a company called AX Wraps.
This is something that you haven't built yet. So you've built a bunch of JDM cars.
Yeah.
You've built Euro cars before.
Yeah.
But this British car, you've never built anything like this before.
Yeah. So you could argue that European cars are something that I haven't really done, although this year I did the BMW, but this is very unique because I generally typically work on new chassis cars because those are really good opportunities to showcase and work with a lot of partners in development because it's a new car. This is a car that's essentially about 20 plus years old, a car that I fell in love with when I was a kid. I feel like this era of the Aston Martins were absolutely beautiful. I actually heard from an auto designer friend of mine that in design school, they actually use Aston Martin profiles as a template to design cars off of because apparently the proportions are just right and you can never design an ugly car when you design off of Aston proportions. And so this is a car that to me, it's timeless. Obviously, the newer Vantages and the newer Aston Martins are much more wild and aggressive. But to me, this embodies the balance of sportiness and the classiness that is Aston Martin, right? The James Bond vibes, if you will. And so I had a really unique opportunity. I had a follower on Instagram by ACR Performance, and we were kind of liking each other's posts, but it never dawned on me to click on his profile to see who he was. And then I realized this is a hardcore Aston Martin dude out of Japan, and he had this all carbon fiber exposed Aston Martin Widebody, and I was like, dude, this is absolutely bonkers. And I realized not only does he manufacture this kit, but he actually races his cars. So he's on these circuits in Japan, he has an N24 race car and he has a street Vantage as well. And so we started talking and I said, hey, tell me more about your ACR Performance kit. And he says, well, we have a couple in the world, but there is none in the US right now. Would you be interested? I said, hey, if I can potentially pitch this as a SEMA project, would you be interested? And he was super stoked because for me, goals is trying to get a car into Tokyo Auto Salon. For him, it's trying to get a car into SEMA. It's the opposite cross borders kind of opportunity. And so we worked out a deal. We agreed to do the full optical carbon kit, the Widebody ACR Performance kit. And then about 2 months into production, he reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing a full dry carbon kit? So his car is optical, but it's wet laid carbon. This is full dry. So this is super feather light. It is super thin. The rear bumper is 11 kilograms, or if I remember correctly. It's basically 4 pounds. The full rear bumper is about 4 pounds. The whole kit boxed was just about 22 pounds. So you can imagine the weight of what would be probably 1 fiberglass fender, maybe 2 fiberglass fenders, is the weight of the whole kit. And so when you ship something that big, a refrigerator box, usually FedEx or UPS will try to figure out what they call dimensional weight, right? So it's the size of the box plus the weight. The shipping calculators wouldn't print out a shipping label because they said, hey, you have a box this big, but there feels like there's nothing in this box. And so it's really, really cool. So this is all true dry carbon. I mean, there's a little bit of flex to it, but I mean, this is race car stuff, you know, essentially. Now, there is some challenges with dry carbon. The natural manufacturing process means there are a ton of pinholes because there's essentially no gel coat. It's just carbon weave that's impregnated with a little bit of resin, and that gets then baked in an autoclave. And so there is a little bit of for me, I obviously build a lot of show cars, so I'm looking for clean carbon finishes. With race car parts, it is what it is. But we did a lot to prep this surface. We ended up PPFing the whole surface with a stealth film from S-Tech to kind of give it that sort of uniform texture. But yeah, that's probably the most notable thing on this kit right now.
Well, the thing is, traditionally with dry carbon, you would actually livery it.
Yeah.
You would wrap it or sometimes paint it in some crazy cases for race cars. Generally speaking, I feel like you wouldn't really leave it exposed.
No.
But these cars have a really special place in my heart. What year is this one?
This one's, so it's still a Gen 1 car, but it is a 2011 Vantage S. So with the Vantage S came a little bit of upgrades. Had a 4.7 liter. For the paddle shift system from their Sport Shift, it came with a lighter Sport Shift 2, which had quicker shifting sort of mechanism, a lighter transmission, and a few other options.
I absolutely love it because of how different this is versus a lot of the GT cars that existed around that time, you know? So is this one a 12-cylinder?
This one's a V8.
Okay, so this is the V8 version.
Yep.
Got it. And then, because a couple of years later, they had the V12
Yes,
version.
so they actually, after a few years in, they did simultaneously release a V12 model.
Yeah.
The V12, obviously, the motor sounds incredible. It's an amazing car, but they're highly collectible. So in the market that we're seeing today, the V12 Vantages have stayed north of 100,000, whereas the V8 Vantages have actually come down quite a bit, which gives me the excuse to be able to cut up and do a wide body, because on a V12, you probably, for collector's value, you probably wouldn't do something like this.
And these actually came in manual too, the V8
Yes,
versions.
there were manual cars, and even the V12s. I had an opportunity a few years back to look at a carbon black edition that came in a manual gearbox. So it's very similar to the Vanquish.
These are just so good looking, and when I look at them, I think about the GT3 race car, and maybe there's some inspiration. From that for this kit. So what does it actually come with? It comes with the fenders?
So the kit is basically the widened front fenders. It has the lower valence as well as the lower splitter. So this is actually two pieces right here. It has the deep canards. And then as you come back inside the front fenders, this is a separate piece. These are called the strakes, front fender strakes. These are also dry carbon. We have the side sills as well as the air duct pods back here. We have the rear over fenders. And then we have the duckbill wing, the rear bumper, diffuser, and then the taillight garnish, which is, again, all in dry carbon.
So many pieces. What about the front here? Is the grille part of it?
So the grille is actually part of a sort of an Aston Martin option, and I sourced that because you have a couple different. Traditionally, Aston Martins have the sort of the horizontal slats, and then so they have this version, which I thought would complement this setup. So
I love this so much because usually on the race cars they have like different colors for this. And it really makes it stand out
100%
from a lot of the other cars. It just looks so good. It's very, very aggressive. Love your choice of wheels. Incredible. How much wider is this than stock?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe this is about 40 mils or 35 mils wider. So again, Hero from ACR Performance, his original intent was to widen it for performance, but the idea was not to obstruct from the OEM design, right? Because you see a lot of modern day wide bodies, and while they're aggressive and super cool, it does start to change the styling of the OEM design. And so his goal was to create a kit that can be mistaken for sort of an OEM plus look. And so, I think it's like 35 or 40 mils front and rear.
Tell me about the brakes. This is a serious braking setup here.
So again, one of the advantages with the Vantage S setup is that you actually get the upgraded brakes. So this is a 6-piston Brembo caliper. And so we decided to, because it's already a pretty good brake, it's like a kind of a good brake setup for this car, we custom painted it. This is a House of Color metallic gold. And then we did a custom logo, which is a collaboration between Driven Mind, which is my brand, and then the Brembo logos. And so we kind of did the custom logos on all four corners.
It looks so good. And I love that you put the sticker for the heat
like
on
I
there.
realized that Brembo's high temp stickers or the the caliper temperature stickers happen to be sort of a goldish color. So I was like, dude, this is a perfect opportunity to do that. And so I actually put that on all four corners. Another cool thing was Evasive was really cool to give me a set of the EVS GTLM mirrors. Now this is a universal kit, and so we actually adapted it to work with Aston Martin's door. So actually, if you look really, really closely, this side sill right here, you can see the indentation right here and here. This is where the factory mirror arm actually came out from. And so I had assumed that the mirror arms were bolted from the inside, but they weren't. It's a single casting. This whole piece right here is one casting of aluminum. So we had to grind it off, reshape it, and I actually found another set of these sort of garnish trim pieces, cut it to length. I mean, obviously you'll see a small seam line there, but we were able to extend it and to delete that essentially, and then door mount a set of GTLM mirrors.
Something so small, but makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
Amazing. Can we take a look at the engine bay?
Yeah.
Yo, so cool. So what is your ultimate goal with this? Are you going to take this to the track? What are you actually going to do with this?
So, as much as I would love to take it to the track, I have, other dedicated time attack cars like the GR86 and even the GR Corolla starting to be developed for that. So I feel like getting too many cars in one lane defeats the purpose of enjoying cars in different places. To me, this is the ultimate weekend cars and coffee cruiser car, right? It's aggressive enough to enjoy and have fun with. It's got the beautiful styling, right? But it's reasonable enough that I can actually go out and take the wife out and go to the mall or go to a Cars and Coffee. Whereas the GR86...
Reasonable?
It gives you a kind of a context of where the GR86 is. I mean, that's a full standalone race car. So it's a little bit more difficult to get out and enjoy that car on the city streets.
So then have you touched any of the mechanical aspects of this?
Yeah, so Velocity AP has been really gracious. They gave us what they call their power pack, their performance pack, which is a combination of equal length headers. We have Inconel headers in here. We have a sports cat, which basically is a high flow sports cat. And then we have there, if you actually look out back, we have actually a race exhaust. So it deletes the full muffler. It's a test pipe that just shoots out from their center pipe right out to the exit of the car. And then between those three pieces, Velocity AP also supplies us with a flash tune that gives us an increased amount of power. And so all the performance mods are from Velocity AP. And then Nitron, again, there's not a lot of people that make parts for Aston Martins. So I just Google searched really quickly, who makes coilovers? And Nitron came up. And funny enough, I used to run Nitron on my Lotus Elise and Exige. And so it's a brand that I'm familiar with. I know it's kind of like a smaller brand, but they make some quality stuff. So I reached out to Nitron. I knew it was a Hail Mary. I said, hey, I see that you have an Aston kit. Would you be interested in partnering with me on this project? And they were super gracious, and so we went with their NTR R3, so it's a three-way adjustable with remote reservoirs, and it's a phenomenal kit. So it's really dialed in.
Let's take a look at the exhaust, and then we'll talk about the interior. Jeez, what a beautiful build.
So yeah, if you drop down low, you can see from the center pipe, which is that guy right here.
Yeah.
This cavity used to be the muffler. So now you're just getting a center pipe, and really the exhaust, if you will, is just the pipe leading the hot air out through the exhaust holes. That's all it is.
It's gonna sound so good.
Yeah,
So then how much more power is this making versus stock?
So this car probably does an additional 20% on power. And again, it's gonna range a little bit differently based on how it's tuned and stuff like that, but we're probably seeing about a 20% increase in power. Yeah, but
how much do they make stock, do you remember?
I don't know off the top of my head. I have, again, 5 builds, 5 different numbers.
Too many cars.
Yeah.
No problem. Let's talk about the interior, if you can go on that side.
Okay.
You always have such a interesting seat selection on any of your builds. I almost feel like it's like a pride and joy for you to have the craziest seats.
Yes.
Because obviously it's the centerpiece of the interior.
100%.
And it's what you're actually sitting in.
100%.
What is this?
So these are Tillet C1 seats. So Tillet is also a brand out of the UK. I have a good friend, Rob Hastings, Grid Partners. He kind of reached out to me, and Rob basically runs a sort of a shop that basically sets you up for track, right? Seats and harnesses, safety equipment. And he said, hey, I have these brands that are, they're great brands, but maybe not as popular in the United States as your typical Sparcos, Recaros, or Brids. And so he said, hey, I have this brand that I want you to work with. Would you be interested? And so he showed me the Tillet seats, which were these bare carbon shells. And they look super, super cool. And so once we set up the deal with Tillet and started communicating, they said that they had these new head containment seats that were coming out, brand new. This is actually the first pair in the United States, all carbon. And so, yeah, they were gracious enough not only to get us these sort of head containment, full carbon seats, but the interesting part is Tillet, like Nitron, is a UK brand. So it just kind of continues to kind of have this sort of cohesive theme. And so we went with that. Tillet also was really cool enough to let us do custom inserts on the seat pad. So we were able to do the Aston Martin wings. I kind of designed this sort of hex print interior stitch. And then they obviously have the grid partners and the Tillet logos and the headrest, you know?
It probably makes it just that much more comfortable.
Yeah.
Because they were just bare?
They were bare. Raw. But they, believe it or not, so Rob has a Porsche that he races with no padding, right? And they actually feel really, really good. So, I mean, we can pull the harnesses out of the way, you can jump into it and see how it feels, but this actually genuinely feels, again, looks really intimidating, but actually feels very, very comfortable. And then we obviously have the Schroth harnesses, the 6-point harnesses, Sparkle wheel. Finding a hub for this is near impossible. The funny story with this hub is that I was looking high and low on forums, on YouTube channels, trying to figure out who has an Aston hub. Nobody knew the answer for this. Now, their sort of factory race cars are weld-on hubs, so it doesn't work. So I pulled off the hub and realized that it wasn't a typical spline, it was like a hex bolt. And so I sent the image over to Alan over at Sparko, and he's like, hey, you know what? There are some Ford cars that actually ran a hex bolt. And sure enough, like, it dawned on me, this era of the Aston Martin, this is when Aston was owned by Ford.
Oh.
So it kind of made sense. And so he gave me this Ford application hub, and it worked. And so there you go.
What are the chances?
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. So
pretty
again,
good, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how pissed off is this thing that, like, the steering wheel is removed, the seats are removed?
I mean, like, less than a modern car. A modern car, you sneeze the wrong way, it's gonna set off some check engine lights, right? I mean, modern cars are the worst.
Yeah.
But this is also somewhat modern in a sense that, you know, when we changed the wheels, the TPMS lights were on to go on, we changed the steering wheel. So I was able to defeat the SRS code out of the steering wheel with resistors, but when the seats are removed, because the occupancy sensors are not in here and then the side airbags are not in here, so it's setting off obviously SRS lights, restraint lights. I don't know what else. I mean, there's a couple lights that it's angry with.
Christmas tree, no problem.
Yeah, whatever.
But it looks so good.
Yeah.
I'm just so glad that it's here. I love the way these look. I love, realistically, for its era, it's just a little more subtle.
Yeah.
But I think that's the cool thing about it. When you know what it is and you know it's special.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that it's here. It's so incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We love featuring all your builds.
Well, I appreciate it.
Hopefully we can shoot more of your 5 builds at this
Whenever you
show.
want to, whenever you want to. You have full access to everything.
I'll come find you and then I'll talk to you about your builds.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to support us directly, go to LarryChenPrints.com. I print and sign every single one of these. This is the perfect gift, or it's the perfect piece of art for your wall.